we don't need these people every day, all year long. It's on a once in a while basis. We need to make it attractive so that way they're gonna make sure that they'll be available for us. We can't get caught short. We just can't do this to ourselves. It's not fair to the community. I propose that we have a $25 an hour rate for our special emergency personnel to come in and plow snow for us. They're getting trained. They're qualified personnel to be able to do it. It's
Who are they?
We have a list. We have a list. I did supply the council with the list, but we do have a list of the people. There's 9 of them, to the best of my knowledge, that are in fact certified and trained to do the job, and the others are not. And I think a couple of them in that are not list don't even want to be bothered because it's just not worth their while to do it for $15 an hour. They've lost interest. Let's face it, we're living in a world in which the almighty dollar.
You can sign my husband up.
They'll have to get certified,
Hey, Judd,
and that would be a conflict of interest.
does that need to be an amendment to the salary ordinance?
I have to check the salary ordinance, but I believe I have a range in there that would cover that. I'll look that up in just a moment.
We do. It's 25, Joe.
Oh,
It is 25. Yeah.
Okay, so you can go up to that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I know that was gonna be up there, but I just couldn't recall the number.
At any rate, I would like to make the motion that the figure would be for $25 an hour. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion. How many hours of training do they have a year?
Oh, you had to ask me $1 million question. Jeff, when he was the emergency management director at the time, he made sure that every one of them guys knew how to operate the plow, the distance from the pavement to the blade, with the shoes, how to put the plows on the vehicles, how to operate them, and so on and so on. A lot of safety protocol. I don't know how long it took. I don't know how long. I know that there was some time that was put into it, and they didn't get paid for that time. It's the willingness to want to do the job, to serve the community.
So we're not paying them for training?
Probably not. To be trained is the qualification to get onto the list. You can't just simply take a chance and put somebody from Jump Street and say, here, go plow the snow. They've got to be trained. If council wants to pay for their training, I mean, give a stipend just to make it, an incentive to want to do the job, I'm not opposed to that. But I do have a motion, and there's a second. I think something this year would be a roll call.
So this is only for emergency management when there's a storm or some other type of emergency, and we call people on this list. This is only for that.
Yes. Now keep this in mind, guys. Also, if the governor declares a state of an emergency, if we're paying somebody $25 an hour, that is fully refundable. If we're paying $25, we're going to get $25 back per hour per man. Is that correct, Mr. Moore?
Yeah. Generally, they will reimburse you.
Only if the governor declares a state of emergency.
Yeah, and then if they have, not all the time. Usually if it's a FEMA is the one who gives the money out, so the state will have to receive FEMA funds.
But in able to get FEMA, you have to declare a state of an emergency.
Well, yeah, they declared a state of emergency several weeks ago, but there was no money available for it. That was just to shut down the state so trucks could plow.
That state of emergency was declared up north, not South Jersey.
It was declared the whole state.
I'm not.
It was statewide.
No, statewide, Randy?
It was statewide.
Yeah, usually it's statewide, even though it doesn't make sense because down here it could be sunshine and up there, but.
Fine, then we'll put in for reimbursement for our 2 guys that were out.
All right, you got a motion on the floor. You gonna have a roll call?
I asked for one, yes.
Mr. Dilch?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Miss Owen?
Yes.
Ms. Sparks?
Yes.
Mayor Benesla?
Yes. Moving down to item number 9, workshop meeting. Guys, how do you feel about having a bi-weekly, 2 meetings a month? I don't really think 1 month one meeting a month is really cutting the mustard here. And then what ends up happening is things come up and then even more things get piled onto the agenda. It's repeatedly happening at nearly every meeting. We need to have a workshop so we can kind of cut through a lot of the red tape and just have discussionable items. We don't vote on them, we just simply discuss. So that way there we could have more productive meetings rather than delayed meetings. It's not doing council any good. It's not doing the public any good. It's not doing anybody any good.
I make a motion that we have a bi-weekly workshop meeting.
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there any opposed? With that being said, Judd, now that we know that we're gonna be having a workshop, figure out 2 weeks from now, that we'll be having a workshop for the purposes of Linda Gentile coming, when you put together your email to her and phone call as well.
I'm gonna have to, I need to put an ad in the paper advertising these meetings, so I need to know what your intent is or what days. I mean, if you're gonna stay with Wednesdays, 7 o'clock, 6:30, is it gonna be the third Wednesday?
We could do one of two things. We could either do the third or the fourth Wednesday. Maybe the fourth may not be such a bad idea, only for the fact that now our minds will be a little bit more fresher. They'll be more fresh so that when we have the meeting the following week, we'll be able to remember better.
May I say something?
I wish, yes, please.
I would suggest that we forestall the first workshop meeting until we have to go in and out of executive session and talk about personnel matters. But to the extent that as of this moment, we can't name a city clerk for any time past the 12th of this month, it's probably unwise to advertise meetings that would occur thereafter. Would you agree, Mr. Solicitor?
Well, the city clerk has a tremendous amount of responsibility for the meetings. They prepare the agenda, they post the agenda, they distribute the agenda, they post the Zoom information. So we need somebody to do that.
Mr. Lafferty, will I be able to discuss anything about the hiring of an employee in closed session to discuss the terms of it?
Our closed session is for personnel matters also.
Okay, so I can discuss this with council then, correct?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So I'm gonna hold until we come out of the executive, and then we'll go back to item number 9. At this time, I'm gonna open the make a motion to open the meeting to the public.
No, and then on the revised agenda, number 10 is the spring cleanup day. And I have one other item I gotta discuss with you.
Then we probably should do number 11 as well. I wrote that on my other agenda here, and that is, what are we doing for a rabies clinic?
Well, that's what I'm.
Teresa gave me a very complicated,
Well, first thing, let's stick to number 10, spring cleanup day, because then the rabies is something that I wanna bring up, so.
go ahead.
That's Mr. Dill should ask about that.
Okay, Mr. Dilge, you want to discuss the spring cleanup day? Mr. Dilge?
No, I asked Mr. Moore to put that on the agenda specifically so that Mrs. McDonald could ask about it at the beginning of the meeting rather than having to wait till the end. She teaches in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. It was a courtesy to her. She called me and asked about, how she could pose a question at council tonight, and I told her I would get it put on the agenda so that she could speak early.
Mhm.
That is the extent of my concern. I think we pretty much resolved that to the extent that it can be resolved tonight, didn't we?
I think so. I mean, we're just going to figure out, I mean, personally speaking, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have a clean community day. We could probably even
Can I
have
ask
it
you
in.
something about that, Mayor? Like today I went for a walk and I walked down Linwood Avenue and then cut through the woods. I found so many TVs, couches. I mean, do we do any kind of cleanup back there? I mean, they got literally electronics in the woods, like down on Linwood Avenue. I saw a lot of trash on the road besides that point. But I mean, there's a lot of big bulk trash in the woods, like off of Linwood Avenue. Just curious.
So far, I've pulled 3 TVs off of my property on South River Road. It's just, it's a recurring.
I don't understand why people just don't put it to the curb.
I got it, you can't. I got a better idea. If you have TVs, just simply take it over to our city yard. I mean, we have an electronic bin over there. That's all you need to do.
Maybe we should advertise that a little bit more so people.
I think we should.
Throw
I
it in
mean,
the woods.
I think we should. We have a dumpster that's on in the gravel pit. You know, people should be aware that if you really have some items that you need to get rid of, right, you know, get the word out that it shouldn't really be a secret, but get the word out. And we should most likely put it on our website if we have our next clerk coming in, because we haven't really been doing a whole lot of maintenance on our website for information. But the reality is, I agree, Mrs. Sparks, I wholeheartedly agree. That our city should not be a dumping ground, and if people will at least know that they've got the ability to get rid of it, then they can get rid of it in a clean fashion.
All right, that's all I had to say.
All right. Moving down to, so hopefully at our next city council meeting, Mrs. Olson and Mr. Owen, excuse me, let me do that the other way around. Mrs. Owen and Mr. Olson will be able to come back with some type of information about a clean community, cleanup day. And maybe what we could do is,
It's actually Mrs. Sparks and Mrs. Owen. And, and,
see this right here, this is what Mr. Moore gave me. He said, you two,
That was on the agenda that,
Fire them.
unless it got changed in the meantime, but
all
that,
right, at any rate, all I want to make a suggestion is this, I think this is a good one for whoever's on a clean community. How about if we were to do this in conjunction from when we have our spring, bulk trash day? Get the advertising out, and that way there, at least, you know, we could do it in conjunction. That would be the way to do it. Council agree with that?
I would have to look at the dates and stuff like that. I'm not sure. I'm not prepared to answer that question.
We have not picked a date yet, that's the issue. I mean, we normally do that, in May. We
how could it
certainly
be-
don't want to do it. We certainly don't want to do it during the week of Mother's Day weekend.
But how could I be in two spots at one time?
We do the cleanup, the bulk trash day where you take your stuff over to the city yard. And then we do it the other one on a different day, whether it be the week before, maybe even 2 weeks before or 2 weeks later. But I mean, you know, just so that we get the notice out to the public so that they are aware. That's what I'm saying. Put the one notice out in conjunction for the both events. But we could discuss that at our workshop meeting. I'd like to really kind of move forward and find out, Mr. Moore, what were you going to say about the
Rabies?
rabies clinic?
well, I have a note here, we discussed it on February 22nd. And in the meantime, Ms. Sealman sent me a text, which I didn't see, but she had already set this up for March the 20th. But she said, if we don't make a decision, if we're not gonna do it on March 20th, we gotta let these people know by March 5th, which is, the vet and I guess the local, health department.
Do we in fact really even know if we have staff that's going to want to do it?
Well, that's the other thing, you know, we'd have to line that up. I know that the two people that one is not here, and the other one said they weren't gonna do it. And then you gotta think about advertising it, and there's a couple posters here, but to get it out, you know, to the public, so at this point, I think you may wanna pull it off.
This is somewhat of a Health and Human Service Committee thing. I mean, honestly, if they're able to pull off and get a shared service with another community, whether it be Weymouth Township, whether it be Buena Vista Township, whether it be anywhere. But I mean, you know, I'm not aware if any town had a rabies clinic last year. And how does that work, Randy? The residents simply have to take their dog or their cat to their vet, and they got to pay for it in its entirety, correct?
Well, there's a requirement that the animals be vaccinated, so yes.
So we should provide that service. There's a lot of people that are still hurting and have to inflict a little more pain on them to, how do I say, have to pay for the vet bill, which vets are no longer cheap like they used to be. My God, I'm hearing these prices of what it costs to have a dog or a cat these days. It's like I cringe thinking people pay that kind of money.
But I
Mr.
thought,
Mayor, Mr. Mayor,
the issue was whether it could be adequately staffed.
that's the question.
I know. So maybe we may get lucky. I mean, we don't necessarily have to do it in March. As long as we can figure out a good day to do it, we can still always do it right up until May. You know, but I really think we should provide that service. There's no question in my mind.
I had heard that, I'm sorry to interrupt. I had heard that it's free at the animal shelter.
Oh, really?
That's what I had heard.
And where's the animal shelter at? The one that's out there on Old
Atlantic
Turnpike
City
Road?
up by Brigantine Boulevard.
Brigantine
That's
Boulevard
fine.
area?
And they do give it free, but the only thing is I do remember hearing this, but you have to, and it's right on their website, but you have to call and you have to get in, like they'll only do so many. So you have to call at the beginning of the month and then you could try to get yourself one for the following, month. So she had told me like at the beginning of each month to call back to try to get it.
So the money that they're saving, they may have to take the day off from work or whatever to have to go out there. It's like they didn't accomplish anything there. I would really like to lean towards providing that service in our community, honestly.
What we
I
need to
mean,
do,
I won't
what we
mind
need to do
volunteering.
tonight, what we need to do tonight is decide whether or not we want the veterinarian to come here on the 20th of March because we only have 2 days to tell him or else we have to pay him anyway, it sounds. And we have to decide whether or not we're still willing to take a delivery of vaccine that has to be refrigerated and controlled and is gonna come pretty soon because the people who provide it think that we're going to start giving it to animals on Saturday, the 20th of March. So really what we're up against right this minute is Saturday, the 20th of March.
Yeah, but do we have to do it in March or can we do it in May? I mean, in April?
We can do it at a later time, however, we have to we have to tell the vet no right now and tell the county no right now. Because otherwise, they're gonna be delivering that and the vet will wanna get paid for March 20th. Regardless if we're gonna do it later or not, that's the decision we need to make now.
May I just simply suggest, this is someone's committee but not mine, but may I suggest that why don't we figure out to do this in April so that it gives us ample time to get all of our ducks in a row before we want to do something and then come to find out that we're shorthanded and by the way, we still got to pay for all this stuff.
But the question is, making a decision on March 20th. Council needs to vote on that, yes or no, and then if it's no, then we can hold it in April or some other date.
Does count, my
May I
personal.
make a motion? May I make a motion, please? I make a motion that we officially cancel the rabies clinic scheduled for Saturday, March 20th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion, and the discussion I have is, will we do a rain date for the following month?
If you've got a suggestion, Mayor, suggest your plan. Nobody's
That's what I'm saying.
nobody's
So we're
against the rabies clinic, we just have to do these notifications about the 20th.
Right, so we have a motion on the floor, and I agree with you, we have to, vote, that we're not having it, but what I'm saying is, will we have one in April? So we have
Mayor,
plenty
you,
to get
unless
everything
you
going
can
here.
certify that you have employees to run it, I don't think we can talk about a date or go any further unless you know who you have to run it and how many employees are gonna be there to run it.
And it's up to the vet also.
Yes.
All that stuff. You gotta do a plan and get your ducks in a row and then we'll vote it.
Well,
That's all.
Just vote on this for now.
all right, so there's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Cancel for March the 20th, aye. I would assume that this should fall under the Health and Human Service Committee for the, rabies clinic. So, could you guys, who's on that there, Mrs. Owen, I think you're on it. But I
I'm
think- Who is? Julie, you definitely are. You definitely are on the Health and Human Services Committee. That I do know.
It's Mr. Dilge.
Mr. Dilge and Julie,
Yes.
You want us to set it up?
can you guys figure out what we're doing here for the following month for April?
We will, Mrs. Sparks, are you willing to meet and discuss this matter? I know you're a very busy person.
I'm ready to meet with you, yes.
We will be prepared for the next meeting.
I will even volunteer my services on the vet day or the vaccination day.
I make a motion that we extend the deadline for dog licenses without a fee, for the late fee.
I said,
To what date? To what date? To June 30th?
Let's do
that
June,
was,
let's do June 30th at this point.
Second, and that's subject to the, state allowing us to do that. I'm not sure how that works, but I think that because of the situation with COVID, they will extend that, deadline for us. I'm pretty darn sure they did last year in 2020, so they'll certainly do it for this year. We're still under a pandemic, time of our lives, so welcome to the real world. Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so you guys will come back at our next meeting with more firm information about what we're doing. And geez, maybe we can have one of our, emergency management people that would, be more than willing to wanna do it. I will say this, and I hope council realizes what I'm about ready to say, because this has been occurring for a number of years. But to the best of my recollection, we had employees that were getting paid $150 to work a 2-hour day or a 3-hour day. I know there's about an
4
hour,
hours. It was 4 hours. It was 4 hours.
4 hours even still. I mean, $150 for 4 hours of time, it's good money. And it doesn't really take 4 hours, but nonetheless, whoever we have that's the city clerk, I think they're required to be here. Because there is gonna be some money that's gonna be taken in and it's gotta be accounted for, and it does fall under the city clerk's, purview, so I would say that let's just try to figure out where we're headed. Hopefully, we see
I
some
make a
money.
motion, we open to the public.
Yeah, let's get the public.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is now open to the public. Mr. Bode.
So,
Thank you. Asking for content for the newsletter Friday, Word document or PDF. We can put in that Buena Vista is having 2 times and locations on the 20th because they've already set that up. Regarding the landfill, it seemed kind of unclear what was happening besides continuing the fantasy that there's going to be some sort of redevelopment there. I would strongly recommend that perhaps the time has come to take the Pinelands ecological evaluation and at least post on the website an RFP to say who can do what, and go from there, because it sounds as though the DEP was happy to put some more money in, perhaps, although again that's not in writing, but there's not going to be this big stuff. I also a question on the garage doors, on where that stands, because that didn't really get an answer before, and if there is some issue, then perhaps that should be lifted up.
No buttons intended, right?
No, just made sure therefore you remembered it, so we go from there. The other thing is that I do want to express appreciation on behalf of the society. Obviously Mr. Seelman has had, as well the whole family, has had a long history of community service, including helping Wackel with the shack, etc. So certainly as far as insurance and everything else, I imagine that's probably already on record with the city from earlier work that they have done. But I do appreciate the city taking care of that. I had discussed with Mr. Moore as far as insurance, and the problem is, unfortunately, while any of us, $800 is a big deal, For insurance, with the JIF, it's a rather small amount to go through that process for what would wind up being mostly deductible anyway. But going to the LEAP grant for a moment, I did find it interesting. There was all that concern from one person about what had been done and the procedure for that, but then when it came to the LEAP grant, when the person went ahead and did the work for what may or may not be similar amounts of money, that's fine. And yet the strange thing is that as we are here tonight, do we in fact know from the county in writing, from county administration, whether it's the county executive, the county administrator, superintendent of public works, or somebody, whether they're even interested in undertaking some scope of work here?
Yes.
You have that in writing?
Not yet.
Okay. Therefore,
But I
then
think your curiosity will be satisfied that in 2 weeks, if they do the resolution, now that we did ours, then we're gonna know that they're interested.
we still haven't defined what
We
the
have
heck.
no, we have no out of pocket, there's nothing that this is gonna cost us other than.
That's not true. It's a reimbursable grant. You have to spend the money.
You're right.
And you still have the situation, as Mr. Moore is trying to put together and Councilman Dilge asked about, of how long are you going to be willing to wait for a decision? Because while some are getting decisions now, others are going to have to wait to then go ahead and get the truck in the event that you don't have it. Because there was all that rhetoric a very short period of time ago about going ahead with getting a truck and how everyone else was terrible for not moving ahead on it. And here we are now, it being delayed for something that is still not very well defined. So I'm just saying that that is rather curious and perhaps may wind up being problematic. But again, renewing the thing about the garage doors.
Let me ask you a question, Creed, in all honesty. Would you like to see the city get that grant approved to the state?
Depending on what...
Would you really like to see that the city would benefit from that, or are you hoping that it doesn't happen?
You know, it's funny, Joe. There was a former friend of yours that insinuated that I like to see you fail. And I don't have... It does not matter liking to see you fail. You unfortunately do a lot of that yourself. The problem here is, for all the rhetoric and all the discussion now, it still isn't defined what exactly it is that the city is going to have to do. It matters if you're going to have to plow 22 miles of county road with one truck or two trucks before you get to the city streets. That matters.
Thank you.
Well, Joe, 2 weeks ago you cut me off at 4, and you took one of those minutes.
We don't bank minutes.
I'm not asking you to bank it, Joe, but the thing is, I don't trust your time.
Anybody else, Mr. Gosson?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Gosson, start over. You were muted there. I apologize.
I was just saying thank you. I was looking for my mute button. Indeed, we do have expense already incurred in the application process, and I will reinforce what Mr. Pogue said, and I don't know whether we actually went beyond the processes, or if you as the mayor actually legitimately have the right to have directed Mrs. Blumenthal to start on the application. But Mrs. Sparks, your understanding and recollection is absolutely clear. At the last meeting, it was understood that there was nothing going to be done that the application was not going to be started and more information was going to be brought back at this meeting. I too was surprised to learn that the application is now somewhere between 3/4 and 7/8 done. And in light of the mayor's comments about following process, I just would amplify that. If indeed it's your right, Mayor, to direct Ms. Blumenthal, please, let us know that as the mayor, as